everybody. We are so happy to have you all here tonight. As I was telling before, we are recording this call. I hope everybody is okay with the recording. And if someone has any problem, just let us know. Especially after if we have time for people to share themselves, just let us know if you want or not to be recorded for participation when you are participation. And Annie, why don't you just tell, hi Nate, why don't you
Sure.
just tell something about our Making Visible series and what we are doing, and then we can introduce Jassy and Haydey.
Perfect. Yes, welcome. I'm Annie, Annie Mann, and with Adriana, we are running this program called Making Visible, and we're really excited for our third session. So the first session we did last year was on the invisible Latinos, and it was about immigration and Latino issues. And then this year, the first half of the year, we did Indigenous community issues. We had 3 speakers on that, and then a Dharma sharing call. And this time is our first speaker talking about women's issues. And so Adriana will be introducing our speakers in a moment. But the reason that we're practicing this is that we are both practicing members of the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha, which is a meditation Sangha. If you're not part of that, then you may not know, but it's a meditation group. And part of the tradition in this group is to not just be meditating on our cushions, but to really practice waking up in our daily life. It's like, how can we be more awake in our everyday life and not just when we're sitting on the cushion and, you know, trying to discover ourselves, but really not just discovering ourselves, but discovering the world. Like, what's really true in the world, what's really happening, and what's our role in it. And so Thich Nhat Hanh will often say that understanding is the very foundation of love, or maybe even understanding is love. And so our hope is on these calls that we gain more understanding about the issues of our world, and that we can then develop kind of love in ourselves to support the healing of our world. So that's one part of it, but also looking at our own internal biases, because all the issues we talk about have something to do with our conditioning and our conditioned mind. And how can we shift our own mind so that we're no longer part of the problem? So less of a part of the problem. Maybe we can never be out of the problem entirely. So that's kind of why we're doing this. But also we really want to just learn. We want to learn more from the people who are experiencing some of this oppression that we're dealing with. So we'd like to start with inviting the bell.
Okay, that's not, I was just going to tell, as always, that we are learning with you. It's not that Annie and I, we don't have the truth. We are as everybody else, and we are learning together. And we are so happy and so grateful with all of you to allow us to learn with you all together.
Yes, yes, yes. So we like to start with the bell, and the bell really represents sort of our inner Buddha nature and our inner ability to calm and really be present. Really just be able to settle into yourself, just breathing in and out, settling in, so that we can really be present for our speakers and take in the information in a really deep way, and not just through our head, but through our hearts too. So that's why we invite the bell. So we'll start with that. And
Annie, we are losing. Okay. Thank you, Annie, for the bell. Thank you, everybody. And I think we can start now. And we have the honor to have tonight with us Yasmin Behbehani and Haydey Esfahanian, daughter and mother. And I'm going to read really like just a small words about them. But mainly I want to tell you that these are great women that I admire so much, that I love so much. And especially tonight, I'm touched to have them with us. And I hope you enjoy them as I enjoy them every day. So just reading really quickly, Yasmin Behbehani is a student activist and advocate against toxic masculinity. As a high school senior, she spoke against a list created at her school that only spoke to the misogyny and degradation girls face every day. In conjunction with her advocacy, she has also opened up about her struggles with her eating disorder that has opened conversations surrounding the self-esteem, self-worth, as well as mutual respect between genders. She has been featured in articles in the Washington Post, Business Insider, Baltimore Sun, and Teenage Vogue. She has also been interviewed by ABC News, Good Morning America, CBS News, and CNN. And also, it is not here, but I think she was invited by Coca-Cola to be one of their young leader speakers in the convention this year. Is that right, Jessie? Yeah. And Haydey Esfahanian is a mother, activist, and advocate for mental health. As a mother of 2 teenagers' daughters, she has witnessed the contribution factors that have created a toxic climate for teenagers of today. Haydey has done extensive research on vulnerability, self-esteem, and mental health diseases mental health diseases that are rooted in her personal experiences, as well as her passion to help others. And also, it is not here, but also they have been working with Syrian refugees, the past, I don't know, 2 years?
About three and a half years.
Three and a half years. They just came back from Lebanon, where they were working also with refugees. So I don't have any more to say. You will hear from them. So please, Yasmin and Haydey, let's start if you are ready.
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmin Behbehani, and
hi, my name is Haydey. Thank you very much for having us.
I think I first want to start off with a video clip from one of the media outlets that I was featured in earlier this year with the outbreak of the list, so I'll share that right now.
At Bethesda Chevy Chase High School in Maryland, change is now in session. Thanks to a group of senior girls teaching their classmates an important lesson in the age of Me Too. The students lending their voices to a school-wide sexual harassment reckoning after a list circulated via text, ranking some of the girls based on their looks.
Can we raise our hands to who was on the list, guys?
A group of male students in the school created the list, which contained the names of 18 female students. Each one of them given a rating from 5.5 to 9.4, with decimal points to the 100th place. Yasmin Behbehani says at first, when she found out she was on the list, it added to her daily struggle to overcome her own issues with body image.
It was hurtful to me because I kind of was thinking, why am I not, why am I not worthy enough to be a higher number? But at the end of the day, I realized that, I define who I am.
Others say after seeing the list, nothing was the same.
Knowing that my friends, my closest peers in my community had created that list felt like the ultimate betrayal, that I could hang out with them every day and talk to them, but under that I was still a number.
Without citing specifics, school officials say they took disciplinary action against a number of the boys responsible for creating the list. But that wasn't enough for the girls, who saw this incident as an opportunity to change the culture at their school. The group worked with administrators to organize an eye-opening meeting with the male students.
A lot of girls shared personal experiences with sexual harassment and misogyny and just the degradation that they face every single day.
A teachable moment that came with apologies from the boys and a newly opened dialogue at the school. I felt very proud that they are, being vulnerable and being really, really courageous in sharing their stories. A step in the right direction that now has others taking note.
To be the generation that basically says this is enough and that we're going to start change. And that starts with working together to send a message globally.
We're now on the fourth day of the attempt.
You need to stop. Yes, perfect.
So like I said, I'm Yasmin and I'm 18 years old. I'm a recent graduate from Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And I identify myself as Iranian American because I am the child of 2 immigrants who came from Iran during the 1970s. And I think I'm just gonna give a short intro about what I'm going to talk about. I think this talk is not only about my experience this year with the list, but it's also how I learned from it and how I used my past skills from other instances in my life to kind of get through it, but also how I felt empowered by my friends around me and my teachers, and most important, my mom, to find a way not to patronize, but to educate those around me and in our school, to find a way to move through this as a community. So I want to acknowledge people who have supported me through this. A lot of people reached out to me and they told me that they are sorry that this happened, and I appreciated their words. Danny is one of them, Adriana is one of them, so I appreciate that. My mother, my dad, my sister, my cousins, everyone in my family basically stood by me during this time. So I'm very appreciative of them. So I'm going to get into the list. So in late March of 2019, I first found out about this list from one of my friends. I'd walked into my 3rd period health class and she turned to me and she said, have you seen this list? And I said, what list? And she said, this list that has our names on it with numbers next to them. And, at first I kind of thought this was the stupid thing. And I've heard about these things happening in high schools before, but I'd never really imagined it to happen at our high school, or more specifically for it to happen to me. And so I was very taken aback and I didn't want to see the list and I didn't really ask her any details about it because it wasn't something that I wanted to cloud my mind with. I realized that throughout the day, it was something that kept kind of popping back into my head because I realized that, when I walked in the hallways or when I walked into class, more and more people were talking about it. And it was very indicative of, the hurt that other people were feeling and how I felt similarly to them. I think that a lot of my friends, a lot of the classroom time was taken up by my friends, just, us like sitting in circles talking about the list and what we were going to do and how we were going to kind of change it, or what was happening to the boys that were creators of the list. And I can definitely say that the dynamic between boys and girls at the time was severely strained because everyone was kind of taking sides as to, oh, did you make the list? Or did you make the list? Or did you know about it? And I think a lot of the girls were questioning a lot of their friendships at that time, which made it very difficult to walk into class and sit next to someone and know if they were just looking at you as a number rather than as a friend or a classmate or someone that you work with and talk to every day. So I think that was definitely a really stressful time in school. And it was definitely a week of just pure chaos where everybody was very on edge during that time. I think that when the girls, there was, 18 of us were on the list, but just the girls that the girls that weren't on the list came to us and said, what can we do to help? This is wrong. And I'm sorry that this has happened to you. And what I think is really says a lot is that one of my friends came up to me and she said, I don't know if it's worse if I was on the list or if the fact that I'm not on the list. Because she said both hurt. Because I think she was saying to me, basically, am I good enough? Was I even good enough to be on the list, to have been given a ranking? Or was I just not even thought about because I'm not enough for them? So I think that, whether or not you were on the list or if you weren't on the list, there was definitely feelings of hurt and betrayal circling around our grade and around the IB program. I think that what really inspired us to kind of take action one day is definitely we had lived through the Me Too movement in our generation as girls. We had seen these amazing women kind of put everything on the line, their careers, their jobs, their families, to speak out about the sexual assault that they had gone through. And one day for lunch, I think it was about 2 days after the list had surfaced, a group of us, I think it was about 40 of us, went to our main office and said, we said that we would like to speak with the assistant principal because our principal wasn't available at the time. And when we spoke to him, we said, this is really unacceptable. As girls, we shouldn't be in an environment where we feel uncomfortable, especially in school, where it's a safe place that we want to come to learn and to have a nice time with our friends and make connections with other people. And I think that the Me Too movement is something that definitely gave us the courage to kind of get up and stand up to make sure that our voices were heard to administration, because at the time, they were the authority, they were who we answered to, and they were what we saw as someone who could take action or help us take action in a way. So our initial thoughts going to the assistant principal is not that we wanted to punish the creators of the list, but we wanted to basically know why they did what they did and why did they think it was okay to do what they did. Initially, as punishment, the administration decided to give the creators of the list a day of lunch detention, which to us was just appalling, because it's not that we wanted to give them punishment, but we thought that even administration would see this and see how severe it is and see how detrimental it is to our well-being in school and decide to give them more punitive, measure to make sure that they knew what they did was wrong, and they didn't. So I think that was also a major push for us to go in and say, we're not comfortable and we want to talk to the boys. So the next steps after we went into the administration was to have a really big meeting. It was a meeting with all of everybody in the IB program, in the senior class, and you could immediately tell the atmosphere in the room was just very, very heavy. You walked in there and everybody kind of felt like they had something to say and they didn't know if it was okay for them to say it, because I feel like everybody was silently judging each other around the room, not entirely sure if they were comfortable enough to say the words they want to say, or if they were going to allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to get up and say that this hurt me, or get up and even say the words, "I'm sorry." And the stories that a lot of the girls shared in the room were very much, they were very horrifying to hear, because you never know what happens in people's lives and you never know the experiences they have gone through. One of my classmates spoke about her sexual assault experience, and one of my other classmates spoke about how she was basically violated by a teacher at BCC, and how she was hurt by that, and how she had never really felt safe at school again, and how this just added to her feelings about being unsafe at school. And some told stories of how they were just sorry for creating the list, and at one point the ringleader of the group who created the list got up and read a letter collectively to all the girls and told us how sorry he was for making this list, and how he doesn't think that we're just a number, basically that he did it out of boredom, which was something that was extremely hard to hear, because we thought that they valued us more as just something to do when they were bored. So I think after nobody left that meeting dry-eyed, everybody was crying. A lot of the boys felt remorse for the things that they had done, and the boys that had nothing to do with the list even came up to a lot of the girls and just gave them hugs, because they never would have imagined the pain that we had felt through this whole entire process. And then after the meeting about the list, we had meetings every week with boys who wanted to come and meet with us to kind of take actions further to make the school because a lot of the children in the school knew what was happening, but they didn't necessarily have any details or know why it was such a big event in the school. So we wanted to create presentations for the underclassmen, specifically on toxic masculinity, to kind of let them know that school needs to be a space of mutual respect, and which speaks more to the broader idea of gender equality. And school needs to be a space that we are comfortable coming in to learn, and we're also comfortable like making friends, and we're not worried if we're being judged or not. So we had meetings between the boys and girls during lunch, and then I was one of the creators of something that we called the Let's Talk presentations, which was the presentations that we created for the underclassmen. So a lot of one of my friends created the presentation, and then we all, pitched in our ideas. I made a Google Sheets to kind of make sure everybody has a sign up, and I sent out a sign up doc for all the teachers who wanted their classes to be presented to. And it was a very stressful time, but in the end, I think that it was proven to be very helpful. And just the fact that the teachers had wanted to kind of participate and be a part of this showed us how much of an impact we were making in our own school, and how much they saw the hurt that we had gone through. So I think that that was very important. But it was interesting to see that many of the boys, especially the younger boys, like I think freshmen or sophomores, which range from like 14 to I think 16, they a lot of them didn't really understand why we were doing presentations on toxic masculinity, and they were very defensive, and they were very I think they just were unopen to hearing anything that we had to say, and they would ask questions that were very rude and hurtful. One of the boys I was presenting to came up and said he like raised his arms and flexed his muscles and said, "Is this toxic enough for you?" And I kind of just brushed him aside and told him to sit down. But it just shows how the younger generation still doesn't even understand how the severity of the situation and the consequences that it has for boys and girls alike. So the aftermath of the presentations, one of my friends was interviewed by the Bethesda Beat, which is a part of the Bethesda magazine, about the situation, because, through talk and through, just the Bethesda community, one of, I guess, the parents had heard about it who works for Bethesda magazine. So they interviewed my friend Jane Corcoran. And then after that article came out, a Washington Post reporter reached out to us and said, I'm interested in doing this story because I graduated high school not too long ago, and I want to know, what it's like, what it was like for you guys. And I think this is a really important story, definitely right now in our time, and what it means in light of the Me Too movement that happened a few years back. So she called us all individually and she interviewed us, and I told her, she asked me, why I didn't want to see the list. And I told her that because I think like many girls my age, or, just any women overall, I struggle with comparison. And I definitely, for the past 4 years, I've been working on my recovery from an eating disorder. And I think that self-esteem, self-worth, and comparing yourself to others is definitely something that's linked to an eating disorder. So I said that I didn't want to see the list because I didn't want to worry about comparing myself to others, about the number that I was given versus the number another girl was given. It's not something that I felt I needed to spend my time worrying about. However, I did end up seeing the list because someone anonymously texted it to me, and the picture popped up on my phone. So I think it took about a week for the Washington Post article to be printed. And when it did, I was in the car actually with my mom, and I said, "Oh, like the Washington Post article just came out." And I read it, and the first two words in the Washington Post article were my name. And I was completely shocked because I just thought she maybe wanted my input. I didn't know if my name was going to be put out there. But, she spoke about my experience finding out about the list, and she mentioned my eating disorder as well. And it's not something I'm necessarily ashamed of, but it's something that I don't really speak about openly unless people ask. But now, the whole world knew, and it's something that definitely added to my reservations about speaking up about the list. But it also made me extremely, I guess, happy that now this thing that I was carrying around for 4 years, the whole world knew, and I didn't have to hide it anymore. So it was very lightening for me to see the Washington Post article, because it also meant that people were interested in what had happened because they knew that it was important. And I think, you know, the difference between what had happened at my school and what happens at other schools around the country with incidents of misogyny is that we decided to take action rather than just sit back and ignore it, because we want everyone to learn that this is not something that's okay or accepted, and we're not going to stand idly by in this culture of boys will be boys while, you know, they continue to rank girls or, you know, locker room talk, because it's not something that we should have to live with anymore. And I think that now I'm going to hand it off to my mom, because I think she has a lot to say about what I was going through and what she was going through this process. So
Yeah, so thank you. Hi again, I'm Haydey. I am Yasmin. My daughter is very resilient and strong, as you just heard the experience she had. I have 2 daughters, and I've always tried to raise them to be outspoken and strong and make sure that their voices are heard. When Yasmin came home and she shared with me this list, or that the list had happened, I immediately had a rush of different emotions that came. I was frustrated, I was upset, I was in panic. None of these emotions were shared with her, because I did not want my anxiety to influence her. I wanted her to remain strong and to have a clear way of thinking as to how she wants to move forward. And I did tell her that I will be by your side and support you in this. And this is not something new, but I'm surprised that, well, at first they hadn't just started going to administration, but it wasn't a surprise because this had been happening for generations and generations. In my generation and the previous generations, sexual harassment and toxic masculinity has been going on for so many years. And so to be able to sit with her and support her, I had to first find balance for myself again. And I had to do a lot of meditation work to figure out how to best proceed forward and to empower my daughter through this difficult time, because she had been on a journey for the previous 5 years, fighting and recovering with her illness, which was an eating disorder. And she had a lot of comparison issues, and we did a lot of work around social media and how the social media these days pushes this generation to do a lot of comparisons with their bodies and to each other and to friends. So this was my number one fear, as to if all of this work that she had done, will it be washed away with this new stress that came? And I didn't want her to turn to her eating disorder again, to find security and friendship there. So that was the biggest concern for me regarding her health and how she would push forward. We had lots of conversations about this. I spoke with other mothers, a few of the other mothers of the daughters that were on the list, and supported them in the fact that this culture should not be accepted anymore. This boys will be boys is not something that is just because it's been around for so long, it doesn't mean that it's okay. And by saying boys will be boys teaches the kids or the children that certain behaviors are okay, and it's not okay to move forward with this and to be silent. So when she approached administration, and the punishment was only the lunch detention that was given to the boy, a few of the mothers and I went to the administration, and we met with the principal and other administrators a few times, sending them the message that we will not sit quietly, and we won't let our daughters sit quietly, because we are raising empowered girls, and we don't want the school setting to be an environment that they think it's okay for this to happen. This is not okay in the school setting. It's not okay in the workforce. It's not okay in life in general. This is something that they need to learn to speak up about, and then the school administration needs to create a safe zone for them so that they could be heard and change can be made. So that is something that Yasmin and a group of her friends pushed for, and we were very happy when administration heard, and they did set up these meetings, and the meetings were very tense, and but very fruitful. They basically felt heard, and the boys did receive it, and they did respond to it positively. So the most important thing was that change had started. It wasn't the same thing as to go to your class, we'll take care of it, and it would just be brushed under the rug. They pushed for meetings, and they got it, and they continued by creating this club, and continued by going to the underclassmen, and hopefully they will continue this work going forward, teaching, because I don't think this is something that can be taught at 12th grade or 11th grade. This is a cultural thing. This is maybe through the family or the society, something that a lot of people reached out to me. Several people reached out and said, why is this such a big deal? This is, so what? This happens all the time. She shouldn't get hurt by it. You shouldn't be worried by it. But that mindset is not the correct mindset, because it's not that they could do something and she shouldn't be hurt by it. It's that it shouldn't be tolerated. They should understand that this is a form of bullying, and this sort of toxic masculinity should not be tolerated by the girls these days. The most important thing for me that came out is, as Yasmin talked about, the Washington Post article. When it was printed, it was the most read article on the Washington Post on the day that it came out. It was the most article that was clicked on in the trend that they keep, because it was, I guess, a lot of people were curious about it, on what had happened and how it was being handled, which was it was a very good article. The important thing was that Yasmin felt empowered, and she felt free from the secret that she was holding within her all these years, trying to figure out and navigate how to not compare herself and not let the anxiety and the stress of the society get to her. She felt that by this coming out, she was able to speak more about her challenges, and there were more people out there that had reached out to her through Facebook or other through email or chats, and explained to her how they had felt and what they had gone through. So she felt empowered, and she felt that she had the platform to speak about it and to make the change going forward, which was the most important part for her to blossom into a new person. She became vocal, and she went on different panels, and she's been taking this leadership and teaching boys from a younger age that this is not right, that this is not the way to become friends, and this is not the way to look at women and treat them going forward. So I realized that the list is intrinsic to toxic masculinity and the way it has been handled in our society and has manifested in our society, and now in my daughter and in the high school that she attended.
Yeah, I definitely think that when the Washington Post article came out, I could have just kind of hid, behind the fact that I had mental illness, but I think I used my resilience from recovering from my eating disorder to kind of get out and be able to speak out about this and not be hurt by, very hurt by the fact that I was on this list. I know that I think Joan asked a question about the pushback that we got. I actually got a lot more pushback when the Washington Post article came out. Obviously my name was there, so people looked up my social media accounts and they decided to message me or direct message me on Facebook and Instagram. And I think some of the things that they said were hurtful. I should pull it up, but one of them said you probably were ugly enough to be given that number, and that's why you were on the list. And I think another woman said this is not a big deal. You guys should stop being so like absorbed with yourselves and kind of just get on with your life. Stuff like that, which kind of was also made me realize that people didn't understand why this was something that we felt that we had to do to speak up about this. I don't even think it was that it was because we were hurt. I also think it's because we wanted to be a voice for a lot of the other girls around, you know, just in our area, or, you know, my sister who's a year younger than me, or just people who in other schools who didn't have a voice, who had gone through similar situations. So I will just pull up one of the things that was said to me through social media, but
so yes, there was I received some pushback from some mothers, basically thinking that it was the boy had not done anything wrong, that this is just something that everybody thinks and he just put it on paper. What is the big deal? And you should tell your daughter to just move on and, you know, just go and focus on something else and not pick on this and these boys, and this is okay for them. And so it was, to me, it just solidified the fact that it's a cultural thing, that people just accept it and term it and just say, oh, okay, boys will be boys, you know, boys can be rambunctious, boys can be sexist, boys can, but that's, you know, that's not the right way. That's not the right approach. That's why it has been going on for so many generations. And now with all of the attention that this got from the media and from other corporate brands like Coke, or we see the Gillette ad or the Nike ad, how they want to empower women, and how corporations are listening to see what the social issues are and how they can change, because they can also make a change in how things are viewed. So I think I think it's the right time for this message to be given, and the platform is there to speak up and be heard. Did you find it?
Yeah, I did. So one of the, you know, more negative direct messages that I got was from this I think it was a fake account that was made, because it had like 0 followers, things like that. And a couple of my other friends had also gotten direct messages from them, but they sent this to me. They said, your ugly ass is probably at the bottom of the list, and that's why you're complaining. What's the point in trying to get the boys in trouble? They're allowed to rate girls, just like I'm sure you judge guys with your ugly friends. So that's what someone said to me through Instagram, which it didn't really bother me. I think the Washington Post reporter, and actually one of my teachers who I really look up to, he said that, you know, you should expect a lot of pushback and some negative feedback from a lot of people, because the Washington Post is a like very well-known article that is read by many around the world. So I think that, you know, just be prepared. I
think one of the important lessons that Yasmin has worked for so many years on is that numbers don't define us. A number on a scale or a number given by a boy does not define us, our self-worth, and shouldn't influence our confidence, because we are the ones who make ourselves. We are the ones that it's our brain and our heart which is important. The body, whatever shape it is, whatever we look like, is not a definition of who we are.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a really good point, because I think the list, it was, you know, scaled in a way that it was to the decimal point. And, you know, I heard from one boy that there was a whole formula, you know, about like kind of like the ratio and what they saw in your body and stuff. And it just kind of, for me, initially, it was like, it confirmed my belief that your body does matter, you know, and how you're viewed. But then I had to take a step back and realize that I'm not defined by numbers, or especially people who don't value me as a person. And to answer Nancy's question, I did get a lot of Instagram messages and Facebook messages from girls my age and girls younger than me, confirming their own experiences with having a list. Actually, like a very similar list happened at their school. And one of the girls sent me a like story or an essay she had wrote about it. And it was very heartbreaking and touching to read. And I think I'll read that a little later, but I we've been talking about toxic masculinity for a while, and I kind of wanted to define it in a way that, for me to make sure that we're not saying that every male on the planet or is toxic, or that who we surround ourselves with is toxic. I think that we're saying that toxic masculinity loosely refers to cultural norms that equate masculinity with control, aggression, and violence. So it's not talking about men and how they're toxic. I think it's more talking about how patriarchy has manifested in our society today that is toxic for both men and women. So whether that is suppressing emotion or distress, or making an appearance of just strength, or violence as an indication of power. It's many people can think the term toxic masculinity refers to an attack on men, but we can also argue that the detoxification of masculinity is an essential pathway to gender equality right now, which I think is important for people to understand, especially as generations learn how they can be equal with men and women both in the workplace or in school or just, at home. So I think that growing up, I've seen toxic masculinity or, just gender disparity be portrayed in pop culture. That has made me realize how the gender norms have, have changed throughout history. So I think that what I've seen in different TV shows, or what I've seen, just in my life, is that women are valued less than men, and men are taught through that to value women less and to see them as property and objects of men. And when we see that as an equation again, that equals misogyny against women. And I think that if I reference a few, just a few pop culture references. So for example, Mad Men, which is, a very popular TV show that was created by AMC. I think Mad Men is, the epitome of kind of gender disparity and what the 50s and 60s. You see in Mad Men, there was three kind of roles of women. There was the woman at home, and then the working woman, and then the woman who kind of ran the office. And all of those women had to do things to kind of get the attention of, either their husbands or the people they were working for, to kind of make themselves visible. And the way they did that was not necessarily in the right way, but it was the way that they understood was how to kind of be seen and to have a voice in the workplace, because they were being dominated by men culture. So I think that it portrays a time of cultural significance, and it obviously portrays gender disparities in the workforce that were prevalent post World War II, as well as stereotypical gender roles and the gender roles and expectations of society during that period of time. And it appears to succeed in capturing behaviors and values of such a patriarchal world. So I think that Mad Men is really indicative to before the 50s and 60s. And when we switch over to the 2000s, the recent Gillette ad that came out that basically said that, enough is enough, that we have to teach our boys what is right and what is wrong, and how that will be better for both men and women in the long run, and how, the boys of today are going to be the men of tomorrow, which is, I think, such a beautiful and strong message to kind of put out there for the entire world to see. And what surprised me is that many prominent men didn't agree with that. For example, Piers Morgan, who I think is a very well-known British correspondent. He said, this is nonsense. I don't understand why this has to be. And he basically stopped using Gillette razors or any Gillette products, because I don't, men, I think from that, or, not that generation, I think he's about the same age as my dad, don't really understand why it's important to kind of put that out there, because it's intertwined in the way that we live our lives. We expect men, or just our society expects men to be the dominating figure. But I think as we move forward, it has to be something that we understand is a place of mutual respect, just in everyday life. Yeah.
So just so that I think what Piers Morgan, what he was saying is that what he wasn't understanding is that toxic masculinity does not mean masculinity by default is toxic, but that certain aspects and cultural expectations about masculinity are harmful to both men and women. So I think men sort of misunderstand and think, this message is that, oh, you think all men just being masculine is toxic. That's not the case. Just being masculine doesn't mean toxic. It's just the behavior that some do is what the aspects that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So I, speaking from that point, I just kind of wanted to talk about what I learned from my experience. I think, what I learned that was important to me is that I don't think, in all honesty, I could have been able to go to administration or be willing to talk to a Washington Post reporter if I hadn't been surrounded by a group of girls who made me feel as empowered as I did during that time. I think that when you feel a sense of connection and belonging with certain people who feel the same way as you, or feel even remotely, the same sensations that you're feeling, I think then it becomes a celebration of your vulnerability, because you're able to get up and speak. And you might be hurt, but the fact that you even did speak just speaks to, the change that you are willing to make and the change that you want to make for everybody around you, and just how much you care about others as well as yourself. So I definitely think that, true connection does begin with vulnerability. And someone that I have looked up to and I've researched a lot is Brene Brown, who has done extensive research on vulnerability and emotional empowerment. And she, I think through her words and through, the numerous TED Talks of hers that I've watched, I've been able to kind of speak out and know that it's okay, that, sometimes negative things will happen to me, but that's just a part of life. And if I don't speak out, I will have never known what would have happened. And even if I do get hurt, when I do speak about something that I believe in, I will learn from that hurt, and I'll take that hurt and make it into something even more powerful. So when people ask me why I decided to take a stand, my thoughts immediately kind of go back to my recovery and how that was really formative in building my resilience to be able to get through situations like this, no matter, the circumstances. So a lot of people also ask me, like, when do they know that it's okay to make a change? I think a lot of the girls that reach out to me ask me, how do you know when it's okay to stand up? And I said, when you feel as if you're being defined in a way that you shouldn't be defined, or you are questioning yourself, that's when you know that there's something wrong. And that's when you know that it's okay to make a stand, because I can guarantee you there's other people who feel the exact same way that you do, and they're afraid not to stand up because they're afraid they're going to be alone. But I think once you have the courage to kind of stand up and speak up, that's when other people do too, and it becomes a very collective effort in that way. I think that this was a very kind of empowering experience for me. And I think also, like, one way that I got through it was, like my mom mentioned before, she had to use mindfulness to kind of gather herself, because this was the week that I found out about the list, it was a very, like, chaotic kind of time. I definitely had to do mindfulness to kind of gather my thoughts and remind myself of who I was, and that, of my self-esteem, and that I define who I am and not others, because many times girls can just get kicked down. And, a lot of the times when people judge them based on their looks, or just judge them, their self-esteem and their self-confidence and, their own self-worth diminishes in a way that can lead to mental illnesses, or lead to body image dysmorphia, or just body image issues all around the world. And as someone who's recovering, or, for the past 5 years has been recovering from eating disorder, I can say that I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because it is the most agonizing thing in the entire world, to have to question yourself and not love yourself unconditionally. And I think that mindfulness really gave me the headspace to understand that and love myself in a way that nobody else could. I think to answer Greg's question, I think sorry, it took so long to answer your question, but so one of the resources that when we made the presentations to show them to the underclassmen, that I think would also work, for any age group, is there's a TED Talk that I really enjoyed, and that we also showed the underclassmen. It's called "Why I'm Done Being Man Enough" by Justin Baldoni, and I think I can probably put the link in the chat. But it's a beautiful TED Talk on why men are taught to be tough and to be strong, but they can't show any weakness, and how that's just the wrong way of thinking about life, because then you're afraid to fail, and failure is not something that you should be afraid of. It's something that you should embrace. So I think that that's a really important TED Talk for just men around the world and boys around the world. I also think that the presentations that we made, I'd be happy to also share the link here, because I think that it's really important too. We haven't really sent it out anywhere, but I think that we should. just to get the word out for other parents to even learn, or just like kind of take their own points and take, because I think everybody's experiences with these kind of situations is different, but they all kind of share a central message. So I can definitely send that as well. Because the presentations that we made, not only was it given at Bethesda Terry Chase, but some other girls at private schools in the area, like Murray or Holton Arms, or just, just throwing out names, but they also like wanted to have the presentations to give to their own schools, to give to, their brother schools, or just the underclassmen, to have them comprehend how, growing up, going forward, the way that you treat women should be as equals. So I think that that's very important. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna end by reading some messages that were sent to me via social media, to kind of like convey the impact that I had on other women around the world. And not only did I feel like I impacted them, but what their words, what they said to me. Did you want to say something before?
No, I just said Nancy asked if the other the girls from other schools. Awesome. Yes, a lot of girls reached out from both private and public schools, even from middle school, saying that they've had similar experiences. In fact, there are other lists that have been made, but unfortunately, there hasn't been like this. There hasn't been an experience about like 18 girls that were empowered to stand up and speak up about this. And the most important lesson that they gave these boys is that they weren't after punishing him. They weren't trying to be victim versus the victimizers. It was about making a change and creating a movement going forward. So yes, a lot of different girls have reached out to us.
And they not even like now, but they like continue to reach out. I feel like it's just kind of something that people find out about sporadically and then communicate because they've been touched by it. And it makes me feel very empowered and happy that I had the courage to kind of say something, and that I impacted them in a way that made them feel safe. So I think that, so I got a Facebook message from a woman. She said, "Thank you for standing up for women at your school. Been a long time coming. I am proud of you." And then another woman texted me and said, through Facebook, "Hi Yasmin, I just read an article about you and your fellow young women who have actively taken a stand against the toxic culture our young men have against women. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, and how proud I am of all of you. I'm 53 years old, and I put up with decades of this type of behavior from men in all its forms. I know the courage it took for all of you to stand up and say enough. Actions like this will change the future for women and men, and I feel our future is safe in the hands of your generation when I see courage and dialogue like this. Best of luck to you and your friends, both men and women." I got another one saying, "Yasmin, I just read the Washington Post article about you and your classmates. You ladies are simply extraordinary and dealt with such an unfortunate situation with grace, strength, and a maturity that you have not been shown. As a mother to boys, I thank you for holding your school and the boys accountable. You will go far in the world. I wish you very best in life. Well done." So I think these are just a few messages that kind of show how, women have been impacted by this. I think that something also is that a lot of the creators of the list, the boys, their parents had a very hard time grappling that the boys had done something like this. I think instead of kind of like making sure that the boys were taken accountable for their actions, to know that what they did was wrong, they defended their children, and they didn't reach out to any of us. They didn't try to see what they could do to make it better. They made it in a way that they thought the boys didn't do anything, that the boys basically said that this is just typical boy behavior and it's not something that should be changed, and it's not something that we should be very worried about, which is, I think that definitely in times like this, like the woman just said, like, I'm the mother of 2 boys and I'm glad you held these boys accountable. When boys act like this, when they make comments or they take actions against women that are hurtful or are implications of misogyny, we need to hold them accountable, because I think that you learn in that way. You learn in that way for boys, for the generations younger than myself and generations older than myself know that the times have changed and that there has to be a mutual respect between both boys and girls to grow up and to live in a safe and comfortable environment for everyone. So I think that